Before we descend into the shadowy streets of 1980s Europe and uncover the secrets hidden in a child's pocket, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel. We are exposing the operations that governments deny and the machinery of power that operates in perpetual shadow. Hit the notification bell. The next buried operation is already unfolding somewhere, waiting to be revealed. The year was 1988. The location was Geneva, Switzerland, a city that exists as a paradox. On the surface, it is a place of pristine lakes, ticking clocks, and diplomatic politeness. It is where wars end on paper and where peace treaties are signed with gold fountain pens. But beneath the cobblestones and behind the heavy oak doors of private banks, Geneva is something else entirely. It is the world's quietest battlefield. It is a city of secrets, where the only currency more valuable than the Swiss franc is information. For the operatives of the Mossad, specifically the deep cover unit known as Caesarea, Geneva was a nightmare. It was not a place for guns or car chases. The Swiss security services, the federal police, were efficient, polite, and intolerant of foreign spies making a mess on their manicured lawns. If you were caught operating here, you didn't just disappear. You caused an international incident that could freeze diplomatic relations for a decade. Enter Ari Ben-Zvi. At 32 years old, Ari was not your typical intelligence officer. He didn't look like a soldier. He possessed a slight build, a receding hairline, and a face that was remarkably forgettable. He looked like a man who might sell you insurance or teach high school geography. This average appearance was his superpower. In a world where James Bond looks like a movie star, the real spy looks like the man standing behind you in the checkout line who you never notice. Ari was in Geneva because of a ghost. For 6 months, Israeli intelligence had been tracking a financial hemorrhage. Millions of dollars were flowing out of the diamond districts of West Africa and vanishing into the European banking system, only to re-emerge in the Bekaa Valley of Lebanon, converted into advanced rocketry and guidance systems for Hezbollah. The organization was building an arsenal, and someone in Europe was paying the bills. The Mossad analysts in Tel Aviv had a code name for the courier: the architect. They knew he existed because the money was moving. They knew he was operating out of the triangle of Geneva, Lyon, and Zurich. But they had no face, no name, and no pattern. He was a ghost in the machine. He doesn't use phones, the station chief in Paris had told Ari during the briefing. He doesn't use telex. He doesn't trust digital transfers until the cash is physically washed. He's old school. He meets face to face. He carries the ledger in his head. The mission was simple in theory and impossible in practice. Identify the architect, map his network, and neutralize the financial pipeline. But how do you catch a man who looks like everyone else in a city of bankers? Ari had spent 3 weeks in Geneva sitting in cafes, his eyes aching from scanning crowds. He was bored, frustrated, and running on too much espresso and too little sleep. The standard surveillance techniques were failing. Following suspects in Geneva was difficult. The city was too small, the locals too observant. If you stood on a corner for more than 10 minutes, a shopkeeper would notice. If you trailed a car too closely, the Swiss police would pull you over for a traffic check. Ari needed a way to be invisible in plain sight. He needed a way to exist in public spaces for hours without drawing attention. He needed a cover that was so disarming, so innocent, that even the most paranoid Hezbollah courier would look right through him. He found the answer not in a spy manual, but in a toy store window on the Rue de la Confédération. The intelligence breakthrough came from a mistake, as they often do. A low-level money launderer in Sierra Leone had been detained by local police for a completely unrelated crime: smuggling exotic birds. Under pressure, he gave up a location, not a name. He said that the big transfers, the ones that funded the Party of God, were authorized during meetings in a specific public park in Geneva, the Parc des Bastions. It was a massive public square, famous for the Reformation Wall, huge statues of Calvin and other Protestant reformers looming over the gravel paths. It was a popular spot for students from the nearby university, tourists, and old men playing giant chess games on the painted ground. For a courier, it was perfect. It was open. You could see anyone approaching from a mile away. There were no walls to hide microphones, no narrow alleys for ambushes. If the architect met his contacts here, he could sit on a bench, feed the pigeons, exchange a few words, and leave. Anyone watching from a distance would just see two men talking. To get close enough to hear the conversation or see the documents being exchanged, an operative would have to be right on top of them. Harry stood at the edge of the park, the collar of his coat turned up against the biting wind coming off Lake Geneva. He watched the giant chessboards. A crowd had gathered around two players, analyzing every move. It was too static. If he stood there watching the chess game, his back would be to the benches where the targets might meet. If he sat on a bench nearby, he would look like a loiterer. A lone man sitting on a park bench for hours is suspicious. A man reading a newspaper is a cliché that every bad guy knows to look for. He walked the perimeter. The gravel crunched loudly under his shoes. That was another problem. Acoustics. You couldn't sneak up on anyone here. He needed a reason to be in the middle of the path. He needed a reason to be crouched down, changing angles, moving closer and further away, without looking like he was stalking someone. He needed a sphere of activity that pushed people's attention away rather than drawing it. He watched a group of children running near the Reformation Wall. They were shouting, chaotic, invisible to the serious adults in suits walking past. The adults filtered the noise out. The children were part of the background radiation of the city. Then he saw it. A small boy, maybe 7 years old, dropped a handful of colorful glass spheres onto the paved walkway. They scattered with a distinct clicking sound. Clack, clack, clack. The boy scrambled after them, diving between the legs of a businessman who, annoyed, sidestepped him. The businessman didn't look at the boy's face. He just looked at the obstacle. Ari froze. He watched the boy kneel, squinting one eye, lining up a shot with a large blue marble against a smaller red one. The boy was focused, intense. He crawled on his hands and knees to get a better angle. He moved 3 meters to the left, then 2 meters forward. No one cared. A grown man crawling on the ground would be arrested or institutionalized. A child doing it was just playing. But what about a man playing with the children? Or a man who was eccentric, perhaps a bit simple, or a dedicated uncle? Ari's mind, trained in the dark arts of psychological manipulation and social engineering, began to spin a legend. He remembered the toy store window he had passed earlier. He remembered the intricate bags of high-end, collectible marbles. The plan that formed was ridiculous. It was childish, unprofessional, and seemingly reckless. If he proposed it to the station chief, he would be laughed out of the room. But Ari knew one thing about human psychology. People avert their eyes from what they consider socially awkward or trivial. He wouldn't just watch the park. He would become the champion of the park. Building a cover identity, a legend, is not just about forged documents. It is about the clothes, the walk, the smell, and the props. Ari spent the next 2 days transforming himself. He went to a second-hand clothing store in the Paquis district. He bought a corduroy jacket that was slightly too large, with patches on the elbows. He bought trousers that were comfortable, durable, the kind a workman or an artist might wear. He stopped shaving closely, leaving a bit of stubble that suggested a man who didn't have a corporate job to go to. He became Michel. Michel was a freelance illustrator of children's books, a cover that explained why he was out during the day and why he hung around places where children played. It was a soft cover, non-threatening. Then he went to the toy store. He didn't just buy a bag of marbles. He bought the best. He bought Aggies, made of agate stone. He bought cat's eyes, clear glass with ribbons of color injected into the center. He bought bumbos and boulders, the large shooters used to knock other marbles out of the ring. He took them back to his safe house, a small apartment near the train station. For 6 hours he practiced. He wasn't practicing surveillance, he was practicing the game. He learned how to hold the shooter between his thumb and forefinger, creating the tension to launch it with precision. He learned the terminology. Knuckle down. Keepsies. He had to look like an expert. If he was going to pull this off, he couldn't look like a spy pretending to play. He had to look like an enthusiast. The next morning, he filled the pockets of his corduroy jacket. The weight was comforting. The marbles made a soft clinking sound when he walked. It was a unique acoustic signature. He entered the Parc des Bastions at 10 a.m. The morning sun was cutting through the mist. The park was sparsely populated, mostly nannies with strollers and a few retirees. Ari found a spot near the central promenade, about 20 meters from a row of benches that offered a clear view of the park's main entrances. He took a piece of chalk from his pocket and drew a circle on the asphalt. Then, he sat on his heels and dumped the bag of marbles out. Clack, clack, roll. The sound was sharp in the morning air. He began to play against himself. He set up formations. He lined up shots. He muttered to himself, cursing softly in French when he missed, cheering quietly when he hit. For the first hour, he felt ridiculous. His heart was hammering against his ribs. He felt like every eye in Geneva was burning a hole in his back. He waited for the police to come and ask the grown man what he was doing playing games on the ground. But nobody came. People walked by. Some glanced at him and smiled bemusedly. Others ignored him completely. A police officer strolled past, looked at the chalk circle, looked at Ari's eccentric corduroy jacket, categorized him as a harmless local eccentric, and kept walking. He was invisible. By noon, the park began to fill up. Businessmen on lunch breaks, students, and the target demographic, kids. A group of 3 boys, school satchels over their shoulders, stopped to watch him. Ari didn't look up. He focused on a particularly difficult shot, a long-range strike against a steely ball bearing he had placed in the center. He fired. Crack. The steel ball went flying out of the circle. "Whoa," one of the boys said. Ari looked up, feigning surprise. "You like that? That's the French drop. Hard to master." "I can do better," the boy challenged. "Show me," Ari said, gesturing to the circle. Within 20 minutes, a tournament had begun. Ari Benzvi, officer of the Mossad, trained in Krav Maga and cryptanalysis, was now the referee and ringmaster of the fiercest marble tournament Geneva had seen in years. And while he measured distances and adjudicated disputes, his eyes were scanning the benches. He was looking over the heads of the children through the gaps in the crowd. He was watching the sector. 3 days. That's how long Ari played the game. He became a fixture in the park. The regulars started to recognize him. "Ah, there is Michel," they would think. The Marble Man. He was part of the scenery, like the Reformation Wall itself. On the 4th day, at 1:15 p.m., the dynamic changed. A man entered the park from the Rue de la Croix Rouge entrance. He was dressed in a charcoal gray suit, expensive cut, likely Italian. He wore rimless glasses and carried a slim, hard-shell briefcase. He didn't look like a tourist. He walked with purpose, but he scanned the perimeter constantly. Ari was in the middle of a game with a girl named Sophie, who was ruthlessly winning all of his best cat's eyes. He was on his knees lining up a shot, but his focus snapped to the man in gray. The man sat on the 3rd bench from the left. This was the dead zone, the area Ari had identified as the most difficult to monitor from the perimeter. It was surrounded by open space. Ari needed to get closer. He was currently about 30 meters away, too far to see facial details or hear a whisper. "Sophie," Ari said, loud enough to be heard but focused on the game. "You are too good. I need to change my luck. The ground here is uneven." He stood up, brushing the dust from his knees. He picked up his chalk. "New circle, over there. The pavement is smoother." He pointed to a patch of asphalt directly in front of the man in the gray suit. Sophie shrugged. "Okay, Michel, but I'm going to win there too." Ari moved his operation. He drew a new circle, barely 5 meters from the polished black shoes of the target. He dumped the marbles out. Clack, clack, clack. The man in the gray suit looked up, annoyed. He stared at Ari. Ari didn't make eye contact. He was focused on Sophie. He was just a man playing with a child. To the target, Ari was an annoyance, a piece of background noise, not a threat. If Ari had been a man sitting on a bench reading a paper, the target would have been suspicious. But a man losing a game of marbles to a 7-year-old girl? That was beneath suspicion. Ari knelt down, his back ostensibly to the target, but he positioned himself so that his peripheral vision covered the bench. He pulled a small, polished metal mirror from his pocket, part of his marble kit, used supposedly to check the level of the ground. He placed it on the asphalt. In the reflection, he saw the man checking his watch. He saw him tapping his fingers on the briefcase. The man was nervous. He was waiting. Ari lined up a shot. "Watch this, Sophie." He fired. He missed intentionally, sending his marble rolling wildly toward the bench. "Oh, zoot!" Ari exclaimed. "My favorite shooter!" He scrambled after the marble. It had rolled right under the bench, coming to rest against the man's left shoe. Ari crawled forward. He was now within touching distance of the Hezbollah Courier. He could smell the man's cologne, sandalwood and tobacco. He could see the weave of his socks. "Pardon, monsieur?" Ari mumbled, keeping his head down, reaching for the marble. The man shifted his leg, irritated. "Watch your toys," he muttered in French, but with a distinct accent. Arabic influence on the vowels. Lebanese. Sorry, Ari said, grabbing the marble. As he did, he glanced up for a split second, not at the face, but at the briefcase. It was an attaché case, leather, with a combination lock. But Ari noticed something else. There was a small piece of yellow tape on the handle, a marking, a signal. Ari retreated to the circle. He had the voice, he had the accent, he had the signal on the case. Now, he just had to wait for the other half of the equation to arrive. The contact arrived 10 minutes later. He was younger, dressed casually in a leather jacket and jeans. He looked like a student, but he moved like a soldier. He sat on the other end of the bench. They didn't look at each other. The man in the suit read a newspaper. The man in the leather jacket smoked a cigarette. Ari was losing badly to Sophie. "You are crushing me," he laughed. "One more game, double or nothing." He needed to keep the game going. If the game stopped, his reason for being there vanished. The conversation on the bench was happening in hushed tones. Ari couldn't hear the words, but he could read the body language. The tension was high. Then the swap happened. It was classic, almost cliché, but effective because it was so fast. The man in the suit placed his briefcase on the ground between them. The man in the leather jacket placed a similar bag down. They both stood up simultaneously. The man in the suit picked up the student's bag. The student picked up the suit's briefcase. They walked away in opposite directions. Ari had a choice. Follow the money, the suit, or follow the courier, the student. He couldn't do both. He was alone. The rest of his team was stationed on the perimeter, too far away to identify the targets in the crowd without a signal. Ari reached into his pocket. He pulled out a large, bright red marble. A comet. He stood up and threw the marble high into the air. It caught the sunlight, flashing red. It landed with a loud crack on the pavement, rolling towards the path the man in the suit had taken. It was the signal. Red means the suit. Red means the money. Two tourists near the Reformation Wall, Mossad support team members, saw the flash of red and the direction of the throw. They began to move, intercepting the man in the suit as he headed toward the Rue de la Croix Rouge. Ari stayed in the circle. He couldn't leave yet. If he packed up immediately after the meeting, it would look suspicious to anyone watching the Watchers. "One more game?" Sophie asked, holding up her winnings. Ari smiled, though his pulse was racing. "One more, Sophie. But this time I play for keeps." The man in the suit, whom they would later identify as a senior Lebanese banker named Qassem, was followed to a private bank on the Quai des Bergues. The Mossad team didn't intercept him yet. They watched. They needed to know where the money was going. But Ari's work in the park wasn't done. The student, the courier who had taken the briefcase full of what Ari assumed was cash or diamonds, was heading towards the university district. Ari finished his game with Sophie. He gave her a handful of his best marbles. "You are the champion of Geneva," he told her. "Keep them." He stood up, dusting off his knees. He looked like a tired, defeated uncle. He picked up his bag and walked slowly out of the park, heading in the direction of the student. He wasn't following to apprehend. He was following to hand off the target to the Kedon, the tip of the spear, the operations unit that would handle the heavy lifting. But as he walked, Ari realized something. The student wasn't going to a safe house. He was going to the train station. Gare Cornavin. If he got on a train, they would lose him. A train moves too fast for a surveillance team to organize a pursuit without preparation. They had to know which train. Ari quickened his pace. The corduroy jacket flapped in the wind. He reached the station just as the student was checking the departure board. Ari stood next to a kiosk selling chocolate. He watched the student's eyes scan the board. Lyon, Paris, Milan. The student's eyes settled. He looked at his watch, then walked towards platform 4. Lion. Ari needed to signal the team again. He found a payphone. He didn't call headquarters. That was too risky. He called a number that rang a pager in the pocket of a man standing outside the station. He punched in the code, 444, platform 4. Then Ari did something reckless. He realized he had one loose marble left in his pocket, a blue Aggie. He walked past the student who was waiting in line to buy a ticket. As he passed, Ari accidentally bumped into a woman with a suitcase, causing a minor commotion. "Excusez-moi," Ari said loudly. The student looked at Ari. For a second, their eyes met. The student saw a disheveled man in a corduroy jacket, apologizing profusely. He saw nothing of the predator. In the confusion, Ari dropped the blue marble into the open side pocket of the student's backpack. It was a marker. If the student dumped the bag, or switched it, the marble would go with it. It was a tiny, glass tracking device that required no batteries, only luck. The student bought his ticket and headed for the platform. Ari watched him go. The train to Lyon would leave in 12 minutes. The Mossad team in France would be waiting at the other end. Ari Benzvi walked out of the station and into the cool Geneva air. He put his hands in his empty pockets. He had lost all his marbles to a 7-year-old girl, but he had won the game that mattered. Or so he thought, because as he walked back towards the lake, he noticed a black sedan moving slowly along the curb, matching his pace. The window rolled down. The game was not over. It was just beginning. The black sedan glided alongside Ari like a shark in dark water. In the intelligence world, vehicles are a language. A van means surveillance. A motorcycle means a hit. A black sedan with diplomatic plates usually means a conversation you cannot refuse. Ari kept walking. To run would be an admission of guilt. To stop would be an admission of submission. He maintained the shuffling gait of Michel, the eccentric illustrator. He let his shoulders slump. He kept his hands visible, away from his waistband. The car pulled ahead and cut inward, blocking his path near the flower clock in the Jardin Anglais. The passenger door opened. A man stepped out. He was not Middle Eastern. He was distinctly European, blonde, square-jawed, wearing a raincoat that screamed, "Civil servant." "Monsieur Michel," the man said. It wasn't a question. Ari stopped, blinking rapidly behind his glasses, feigning confusion. "Yes, do I know you? Are you a publisher?" The man didn't smile. "Please get in the car. We need to discuss your hobbies." Ari hesitated, looking around for help that he knew wouldn't come, then climbed into the back seat. The interior smelled of stale tobacco and new leather. The doors locked with a heavy thud. "Who are you?" Ari asked, pitching his voice a little higher, adding a tremor of anxiety. "Swiss Federal Police," the man said, turning from the front seat. "Counter-espionage division. We have been watching the park, monsieur. We see a grown man playing games with children. We see him watching the benches. We see him signaling with red toys." Ari's heart rate slowed. This was manageable. They weren't Hezbollah. They were the landlords, angry that a tenant was making noise. If they knew he was Mossad, he would be deported by sunset. If they thought he was a pervert or a thief, he would be arrested. He had to thread the needle. "I am an illustrator," Ari protested, digging into his heavy corduroy bag. The agent in the front seat tensed, hand dropping to a shoulder holster. Ari pulled out a sketchbook. It was filled with drawings, sketches of the park, the trees, and yes, the children playing marbles. He had spent his nights drawing them to bolster his cover. "I am studying movement," Ari insisted, "for my new book, The Boy Who Lost His Gravity. I need to understand how children crouch, how they aim. The marbles, they are the anchor to the earth." The Swiss agent took the sketchbook. He flipped through the pages. The drawings were good. Ari actually had a minor talent for sketching, a skill he had nurtured during long, lonely stakeouts in safe houses across Europe. "And the red marble you threw?" the agent asked, his eyes narrowing. "The one that nearly hit a pedestrian?" "Frustration," Ari cried. "I couldn't get the perspective right. I threw it away. Art is a passionate business officer." The agent studied Ari's face. He saw the stubble, the slightly manic eyes, the corduroy jacket. He didn't see a cold-blooded operative of the Caesarea unit. He saw a pathetic, artistic weirdo. The agent sighed, handing back the book. Geneva is a sensitive city, Monsieur Michel. We have many important guests. Men who sit on benches discussing world affairs do not like to be watched by artists. I watch the light, not the men. Harry lied beautifully. Get out, the agent said, unlocking the doors. Go back to your studio. If we see you in the Parc des Bastions again, we will confiscate your marbles and your visa. Ari scrambled out of the car, clutching his bag to his chest. As the sedan drove away, he allowed himself a genuine exhale. He had survived the landlords, but his cover in Geneva was burned to ash. He couldn't go back to the park. Luckily, the game had already moved. The blue marble was on a train to Lyon, and so Ari had to move too. Lyon is different from Geneva, where Geneva is cold and Calvinist. Lyon is labyrinthine and historical. It is a city of silk weavers, heavy food and traboules, secret passageways built into the Renaissance architecture that allow people to move between streets through courtyards and stairwells, invisible to the outside world. It was the perfect terrain for a man who didn't want to be found. Ari arrived by rental car 3 hours later. He had shed the Michel persona. The corduroy jacket was in a dumpster outside Geneva. He was now shaved, wearing a sharp navy suit, looking like a mid-level logistics manager. He checked into a hotel near the Part-Dieu station and immediately contacted the local team. The meeting took place in a bouchon, a traditional Lyonnais restaurant, amidst the clatter of plates and the smell of sausages. The local Katza, field intelligence officer, was a woman named Sarah. She looked like a university student, tapping away on a laptop. "We have him," Sarah said quietly, not looking up from her screen. The student. He got off the train. He took a taxi to the Croix-Rousse district. He entered a building on Rue du Ivry. He hasn't come out. "Did he check the bag?" Ari asked, cutting a piece of bread. "He hasn't let go of the bag. He's clutching it like it's a bomb. We have audio on the apartment. It's faint, vibrations off the window glass. He's waiting for someone." "The architect," Ari said. "We think so. We picked up a transmission earlier. A burst signal from a jagged frequency. Someone is coming to verify the shipment. But Ari, there's a problem." "There is always a problem. The building is a fortress, top floor, one entrance, and the neighborhood, it's full of lookouts. If we set up a static post, we'll be burned in an hour." Ari nodded. He knew the Croix-Rousse. It was the old silk workers' district, built on a hill, full of those secret traboules. "We don't need a static post," Ari said. "We need to be inside the room." "How?" "We can't breach without noise." Ari reached into his pocket. He didn't have marbles anymore, but he had the mindset, the philosophy of the game. Manipulate the environment so the target reacts in a predictable way. "We don't break in," Ari said. "We make him bring the bag out." "How?" "Paranoia," Ari said. "The student is young. He's carrying millions in diamonds or cash. He's alone in a foreign city. He's terrified. We just need to turn up the heat until the pot boils over." The psychological warfare campaign began at 8 p.m. The Mossad technical team hacked into the local telephone exchange. They didn't listen in. They attacked. The phone in the student's apartment began to ring. When the student picked up, there was no voice. Just the sound of heavy breathing, then a click. 5 minutes later, it rang again. This time, a recorded voice, synthesized and robotic, recited a string of numbers. 4, 4, 4, the platform number from Geneva. Inside the apartment, the student, whose name they learned was Youssef, was unraveling. Ari monitored the audio feed from a van parked 3 blocks away. He could hear the student pacing, the rapid footfalls on the wooden floor. "Who is this?" Youssef screamed into the receiver. "What do you want?" Ari signaled the tech officer. "Cut the power." The lights in Youssef's building flickered and died. The entire street went dark. It was a localized blackout, engineered to look like a grid failure, but to a paranoid courier holding a fortune in illicit funds, it looked like a raid. "He's moving." Sarah's voice crackled over the comms. "Thermal shows him at the window. He's checking the street." Ari sat in the van, visualizing the board. He had forced the opponent to move his piece. "Send in the sweeper," Ari ordered. The sweeper was a local asset, a large man on a motorcycle. He roared down the silent, darkened street, revving his engine aggressively. He paused in front of Yusef's building, shined a high-powered flashlight directly at the top-floor window for 3 seconds, and then sped off. It was crude, but effective. Yusef panicked. "He's grabbing the bag," the audio tech reported. "I hear the zipper. He's leaving. He's running down the stairs." "All units," Ari said, his voice calm. "He is flushing. Do not intercept. I repeat, do not intercept. Let him run. He will lead us to the boss." Yusef burst out of the building onto the dark street. He didn't look like a professional operative anymore. He looked like a scared kid. He clutched the backpack to his chest. He looked left, then right, and began to sprint up the hill, deeper into the maze of the Croix Rousse. Ari opened the van door. "I'm on foot. Keep the perimeter loose." He began to run, keeping to the shadows. He wasn't Michel, the marble player, anymore. He was Ari Benzvi, the hunter. The chase through the Croix Rousse was a nightmare of verticality. Yusef wasn't running aimlessly. He was heading for a specific location. He darted into a doorway that looked like a private residence. Ari skidded to a stop. He recognized the symbol above the door, a lion's head. It was a trabul. He pushed the heavy door open. It led into a long, dimly lit stone corridor that smelled of damp earth and history. The tunnel cut right through the block of buildings, emerging on a parallel street higher up the hill. Ari ran through the tunnel, his footsteps echoing. He emerged into a courtyard with a spiral staircase. He looked up and saw the tail of Yusef's jacket disappearing through an archway on the other side. Yusef was trying to shake a tail he couldn't even see. He was moving toward the meeting point, likely an emergency fallback location. Ari followed, checking his corners. The trabuls were dangerous. A man could hide in an alcove and put a knife in your ribs before you saw him. Yusef emerged onto the Monte de la Grande Côte, a steep pedestrian street lined with old buildings. He stopped at a public fountain, gasping for breath. He pulled a phone from his pocket and dialed frantically. Ari pressed himself into a doorway 50 meters down. He pulled out a directional microphone, aiming it at the fountain. "I can't stay there," Yusef was shouting. "They know. The lights went out. Someone shined a light on me. I'm bringing the package to the sanctuary. I don't care about protocol." The sanctuary. Ari memorized the term. Yusef hung up and started moving again, slower now, thinking he had escaped the immediate threat. He led Ari to an abandoned silk factory near the plateau of the hill. It was a hulking brick structure with broken windows, surrounded by a chain-link fence. Yusef slipped through a hole in the fence. Ari waited. He signaled the team. "Target is at the old silkworks. Establish a cordon. I'm going in." "Negative, Ari," Sarah replied. "Wait for backup. We don't know who is inside." "If I wait, he hands off the package and the architect disappears through a tunnel. I have to mark the receiver." Ari didn't wait for authorization. He slipped through the fence. The factory floor was a cavern of shadows and rusted machinery. Moonlight filtered through the skylights, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. Ari moved silently, using the looms as cover. He heard voices in the center of the room. Yusef was there, the backpack at his feet. Standing opposite him was a man Ari had never seen before. He was tall, elegant, wearing a long overcoat. He held a cane, not for support, but as an affectation. This was the architect. "You are a fool," the architect was saying, his voice echoing softly. "You were spooked by shadows. You have compromised the route." "They knew," Yusef pleaded. "The phone." "The lights. Amateurs panic," the architect said coldly. "Professionals assess." The architect stepped forward and nudged the backpack with his cane. "Open it. Let us see if you brought the cargo or if you brought a tracker." Ari froze. The blue marble. Yusef unzipped the bag. He pulled out bundles of cash wrapped in plastic. Then he reached into the side pocket to ensure it was empty. His fingers closed around something small, hard and spherical. He pulled it out. He held it up to the moonlight. The blue glass swirl of the cat's eye marble caught the light. "What is this?" Yusef whispered. The architect stared at it. He leaned in closer. He didn't look confused. He looked horrified. "A marble," the architect said. "A child's toy. He looked around the vast, empty factory, his eyes wide. He understood. He realized that the chaos of the last few hours hadn't been bad luck. It had been a game, and someone was playing with them. "Leave it," the architect shouted. "Leave the bag. It's a setup. Mossad, freeze!" Ari stepped out from behind the loom, his weapon drawn and leveled. His voice was thunderous, filling the space. Youssef dropped the marble. It hit the concrete floor. Click, it rolled. The sound was deafening in the silence. The architect didn't freeze. He spun, raising his cane. The tip exploded, a hidden single-shot mechanism. A bullet sparked off the machinery inches from Ari's head. Ari fired twice. Controlled shots, not to kill but to disable. The first shot hit the architect's thigh, spinning him around. The second hit the wall as Youssef scrambled into the darkness. "Secure the perimeter!" Ari shouted into his headset as he advanced on the fallen architect. The heavy doors of the factory burst open. The Kidon team poured in, flashlights cutting through the gloom. Youssef was tackled before he made it to the exit. Ari stood over the architect. The man was clutching his leg, grimacing in pain. The cane lay just out of reach. Ari kicked the cane away. He looked down at the man who had funded terror across the Middle East. Then, Ari saw it. The blue marble had rolled across the uneven floor and come to a stop exactly against the architect's shoulder. Ari holstered his weapon. He bent down and picked up the marble. "You lose," Ari whispered in French. The aftermath of an operation is never like the movies. There are no martinis, no victory parades. There is paperwork, debriefing, and the quiet dismantling of a life. The money in the bag totaled $4 million. It was seized. The architect, identified as a rogue financier named Ibrahim K., was quietly extradited to a black site for interrogation. The intelligence he provided would dismantle 3 major supply routes into Lebanon over the next year. Ari Benzvi sat in a cafe in Lyon the next morning. He was watching the sunrise over the Rhone River. He was exhausted. His adrenaline had crashed, leaving him hollow. He reached into his pocket. He pulled out the blue marble. He rolled it between his fingers. It was just a piece of glass. Cheap, mass-produced. Yet it had brought down a multi-million-dollar empire. He thought about Sophie, the little girl in the Parc des Bastions. She was probably at school now, telling her friends about the funny man named Michel who gave her all his marbles. She would never know that she had been an unwitting asset in a counter-terrorism operation. This was the moral weight of the job. To catch the wolves, you sometimes had to hide among the lambs. You had to use innocence as camouflage. Ari paid for his coffee. He walked to the railing of the bridge. He held the marble over the water. He should keep it, a trophy, a reminder of the win. But Ari knew that in this business, you don't keep trophies. Trophies are evidence. Trophies are attachments, and a spy cannot afford attachments. He opened his fingers. The blue marble fell, a tiny streak of azure against the gray water. It hit the surface with a splash so small it was invisible from the height of the bridge. It sank to the bottom, to be buried in the silt, just another secret in a world full of them. Ari turned up his collar against the wind. He walked toward the train station. Michel was dead. Ari was alive. And somewhere else, in another city, a new game was waiting to be played. If you were captivated by this journey into the shadows of espionage, don't forget to like this video and share it. The algorithms hide these stories, but you can help bring them to light. Subscribe for more deep dives into the operations they don't want you to know about. Until next time, keep your eyes open. You never know who is playing a game right next to you.